So stress threw my back out. No worries, I'm fine. Except when, I'm laying there flat, staring up at the ceiling, wondering if I'll ever walk again. Which, ironically, it's also the plot of my next movie, On My Back. And no, it's not about a sex worker. Though maybe it should be. I mean, those films are really cleaning up at award shows these days.
Crack open a cold box of wine or pour something cold on ice because it's the Binge Watchers podcast.
Home video headlines, what's new in the world of TV and movies? Hey, what can you say about Gene Hackman? Good journey to you, Gene Hackman. Although, there are some things about his natural death that seem unnatural. And my mind's racing, with like fantasies of an actor that has died at the center of a real mystery here. Leave it to a legend to die mysteriously. Here's what's bothering me so far. No gas leak detected, no overdose, no one spoke to him or his wife in 2 weeks. Big fat question mark. Like, is that elder abuse? Is that elder care? Like, how is that elder care? Like, remind me to call my asshole parents after this show. Actually, they're alright. We had McMuffins the other day. They is alive. Just kidding. About the asshole comment or the McMuffins. You decide which thread to follow. Tonight's movie. I was going to keep rolling with some toxic thrillers, but, I've had enough of toxic stuff in my life right now, so, those movies are out. When I was like, hey, let's look up something seriously, Irish movies, because everybody in the U.S. right now is Irish at least once a year. Nope. Irish movies are depressing, and I'm depressed enough lately. I stumbled into the Celtic movie after all, though, in the middle of the night. Beowulf and Grendel. Hey, in Denmark, in the 6th century, Danish king Hrothgar and his warriors kill a troll whose son Grendel vows revenge. Half the cast, alright, ends up in Game of Thrones and the 13th Warrior. This is the first movie that I saw Gerard Butler in. Oh, wait, second. The first might have been Dracula 2000. Yeah. And he's a better Beowulf than he is a Dracula. Stellan Skarsgård is the best King Hrothgar, though. If you've seen a bunch of King Hrothgars in these movies, I think Stellan's killing it in this. All right, we'll be right back with the show in progress. But after these messages, what do we got tonight? All right, we got these things, these fancy bubblegum type things that you order on demand. If you're watching the video version of this blog, show, podcast, whatever the hell it is anymore, then you can see me holding up these cute little Care Bear bubblegum bags. Why Care Bears? I don't know. They suck me in every time. I don't know. I've always liked them since the 80s. I'm not going to mark myself. I'm not going to say I'm from the 80s. Let's just say fan of the old Care Bears TV show and movies. Anyway, this whole website has like a bunch of bags of bubblegum related to like a bunch of kid shows and like old stuff. I'm just going to read you what I'm supposed to read you before I get off on a crazy tangent here. All right. Tonight's messages are: the mission of Bubblegum Kids is simple. It's to make candy fun again. They believe that candy is more than just a sweet treat. It's an experience. From unique flavors and vibrant packaging to your favorite characters and pop culture icons, they create candy that inspires joy and transports you to a world of playful imagination. Popeye, Care Bears, Slush Puppies, Archie, icy themed flavors. You can use our link to get 15% off a bag of bubble gum. Or bubble yum. Alright. Now back to the show. Already in progress. Okay, favorite bits from Beowulf and Grendel. Beowulf coming out of the sea. Grendel's humanity. It's kind of like, in this version, the Grendel monster is kind of like an offshoot of humanity. I don't know, Denzian humanoid or Neanderthal humanoid, but clearly they were aiming for something like, oh, it's just a human cousin. It's walking around, it's stalking around, it's trying to live its life, and modern humans are getting in the way, or there's conflict there. So there is some adherence to the poem. Like, for instance, the sword that was found in the mom's lair. How about ripping the arm off? It's a weird weakness to have, right? They were talking about, like, Grendel's flesh is impenetrable by the Danes' weapons, or the Danes' weapons. And then even Beowulf and his dudes are having a hard time busting through his thick hide. And he's overpowering all the dudes. But then to remove the arm at the shoulder joint, like his Achilles heel, but it's like his Achilles arm or something, right? It's the only thing that takes him out. But I mean, that's true to the epic poem that the movie's based on. Go back and read it. It talks about ripping off Grendel's arm. And then the mother shows up. She's monstrous and beautiful. I always like the depiction of the mother in these movies as being both monstrous and beautiful. I think that's the way to go. Seductive siren, but also is going to rip you to pieces. There's like 5 movies about Beowulf. I like 3 of them. I mean, so that's this one. There's like a Mad Max style one. It's in the future. It's got Christopher Lambert. In that one, he's like a hired gun who happens to wander into the colony. That would be where the Danes are. And that Hrothgar's like, hey, it's killing my whole colony. What's up? It comes at night. And then in that story, you find out that, like, oh, Hrothgar's banging Grendel's mother. And I think in that version, Grendel might be his son. I think one of the other Beowulf movies goes that angle too, unless the mom's in love with Beowulf. But I think she hooks up with Hrothgar in that one. Anyway, like I said, there's like 5. And there's the 13th Warrior one, or based on the book Eaters of the Dead, but it's basically the same story, only Beowulf is called, what is he called in that movie? He's called like Bullseye. Yeah, instead of being called Beowulf, he's called like Bullseye in that movie. 13th Warrior is a great movie, but I kind of see it separate from the Beowulf story because they changed so much. And then the animated one. I hate the animated one. It's kind of a joke. Like, the animated one. So it's Bob Zemeckis. You know, he made Back to the Future. He was doing like a motion capture thing. They're like, oh, it's revolutionary animation at the time. It's a fucking terrible movie. Grendel looks like shit, right? And I think like the whole thing was like, oh, it reunites. I think it's Crispin Glover doing the voice in mocap as Grendel. But they give him a giant snoz and his head's like misshapen, and then he has a weakling like body. So it's like, okay, I was gonna overpower them. He's got no muscles on his frame. And then Beowulf was like some svelte, right, like Viking warrior dude. But then it's gosh, who's the actor? Ray somebody. He's like an English actor. We've seen him, but clearly like the voice doesn't match the body, obviously, for Beowulf. So if you know the actor in real life, you're like disconnected by his voice doing the animation. Anyway, hey. Of all these Beowulf movies, I only jerked off to one of them. Guess which one? Ratings. How do we rate movies on the show? We got our own special system that we want the whole world to adopt. We talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, and we think it's awesome. Binge Now, Binge Later, Binge Never. Basically, it breaks out like this. Move it to the top of your playlist. Watch it right now. That's how exciting it is. You're going to love it. That's Binge Now. Binge Later would be like, add it to your list, get around to it. It's similar to the things that you're going to like and love, but you don't got to watch it immediately. It's not that popular. Binge Never, which one of my friends claims doesn't exist because it's like a paradox. Like if you literally tell somebody not to watch something, they're going to be contrarian and they're going to go watch it simply because you've told them not to watch it. But Binge Never means you can't get the 90 minutes back, the 2 hours, the 3.5 hours, whatever epic you're watching. You've wasted the time. You can't get that part of your life back. And that happened to me the other day. What was I watching? The hell was I watching that was not that great? It was like disappointing in facets and form, and just leave disappointed. Gosh, it's on the top of my head. This is gonna be rough. Everybody knows how much I love Chris Pine, but Chris Pine wrote with his buddy and directed a movie that feels like a novel on screen. Has a great cast. Steven Jervoblowski and Danny DeVito. I think An- Annette Bening. Um, anyway, lots of lots of good people in it. But and then obviously Chris Pine himself. The character's great. The setting's pretty great. Like the eccentricities of all the characters is great. It's a little weak on plot. It's more of like I don't know, an art film, like a poetic film. But at the end of it, you're left unsatisfied. And if I had to rate it against my own system, dude, unfortunately, you're in a binge never, man. And I remember reading that the movie had problems during production and had problems getting released. And again, it's coming off maybe the end of COVID when it was getting released, or they weren't sure if it was going to get a theatrical or not. I don't know. But anyway, it has good parts, but altogether the mise en scene, the salad doesn't come quite together the way you want it to. And I'm just farting out my ass with the artistic words that I just said, but whatever. I'm just trying to prolong the inevitable of trying to explain why I don't like this movie. I tried very hard. So anyway, here's some things that influence the rating of the Beowulf and Grendel. It's not geographically correct. They say the movie setting is too mountainous for Denmark. And so I wonder if Beowulf was just like a popular pulp tale, like at the time. Maybe like in its time, people were just like, oh yeah, this is absolute trash about some monster and some dude. It's like a soap opera or whatever. But because it's like one of the only surviving epics from its time, right? The manuscript has survived this long that we think it's great or we think it's worth like celebrating, and we've adapted it so many times and we just keep endlessly adapting it, like how we endlessly adapt Dracula, we endlessly adapt Frankenstein's monster, we endlessly adapt the Wolfman, we endlessly adapt Merlin's and King Arthur's story. So maybe like there's a ton of other stories from the Beowulf epic poem era, right? But because nobody has copies of those plays or stories, we're like, oh man, Beowulf's pretty cool. And it'd be funny if the people walking around at that time were like, no, Beowulf sucks, actually. We fucking hate this thing. We wish this guy, Ole Olafsson, hadn't written this fucking thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's what he's going to be remembered for or whatever. And then, like, and then he just got saved, the half the manuscript or whatever. But they did say it went through a fire at one point. That how he derived the play or the epic poem, like, part of it's missing or it's damaged but still readable. I don't know how that quite works unless we filled in the blanks. And then maybe it was better before. They're like, there wasn't originally a monster, but we Hollywooded it up. Just kidding. There probably was always a monster because what's the point? And then some scholars, I mean, there's obviously some fake documentaries on the Fake History Channel where you watch them and go like, was Beowulf a real person? Here's the 6th century evidence that he was a Viking chief and da 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 da. Whether or not he's just a legend, where are we at? So how do we rate this movie? Does it fall in a Binge Now, a Binge Later, or a Binge Never? I have now watched this movie exactly 4 times. It's my introduction to, what's his name? Dang. I'm skipping around a lot. Oh, sorry. Gerard Butler. I almost forgot the guy's name that I'm talking about. How lame is that? Anyway, so it's my introduction to Gerard Butler. Wouldn't have gone on to see him in other things. Well, maybe I saw this about the same time that I saw Dracula. I feel like they came around the same time. Well, actually, Beowulf. This one comes out in 2005. Dracula is literally in 2000 because it's called Dracula 2000. So let's see. Gosh, I love his introduction to this character is so strong. He's like in the water, in the sea, and like wakes up having like survived a storm. And he's looking for his buddy, who becomes one of his swordsmen, brothers in arms or whatever. And they go off and fight for King Hrothgar. But haven't seen it 4 times. I did not like the witch. That there's a character introduced that isn't in the poem who plays the romantic interest and also hooks up with Grendel, but hooks up with Beowulf as well. Has a Grendel baby. Spoiler alert: has a Grendel baby in this movie. Everybody's doing their best to have like a regional accent, except like Gerard Butler's obviously from Scotland, and you can't get rid of the Scottish accent, and he's mixed in with actual Norwegian actors who sound like they're from Norway and Sweden and all those other places, Iceland, whatever. And then she's dumped in there, and she's like from New York or something, so she sounds very American, who's like displeased that she's in the 6th century with the rest of them. You know what I mean? And so for that merit, it's like she takes you out of the story a little bit. So gosh, I deeply, deeply want to say Binge Now because I've just spent a whole show talking about this movie, and you're like, oh, what should we be watching right now? And and I want to promote it, but it's just like, yeah, man, you're gonna be like halfway. Yeah, I think it's gonna be a binge later there. Fan service. The fams are chiming in. What are they saying? What are they contributing to the show? Frequent fan cashing in his frequent fan flyer miles. Rinny Tabu 5558. He wanted to let us know that his favorite killer movie is The Wraith. That's a pretty great selection about Charlie Sheen getting killed and seeking revenge in his supercar when his tiger blood revives him and he gets revenge on the producers, who canceled his TV show. Just kidding. The movie The Wraith is actually about a teenager who gets killed by some bullies, and then he comes back and comes down in a supercar from heaven to fuck them all up. That's a good choice. A few weeks ago, we were talking about a movie called The Car, which has a killer car in it, and that has a supernatural reason. The Wraith is pretty sci-fi, but it has to have a supernatural origin because they don't actually explicitly say that an alien hooks him up with the supercar and puts him back together because he's almost dead and revives him to life. So if he's not coming down from heaven, then is he coming up from hell? Who knows? Is he a Ghost Rider type Avenger? Maybe. It's made in the 80s. It's a standalone story. It's got a great cast. It's got those 80s Brat Packy people in it. And again, his supercar transforms into a super motorcycle at one point, I think, and he floats down or floats back up at the end. I don't know. He moves on to the afterlife anyway. Spoiler alert. But good pick, Rennie Tabu 5558. Sounds like a hotline number. Like we're gonna call him up. Hey Rennie, what's your movie pick of the week? 5558. Dial 55555 mystery sausage. All right. Okay. Staff picks. I actually binge watched the entire this. Basically, if you're not gonna watch Beowulf and Grendel and you don't like my recommendations, you've had enough. But what else can you watch in the week that's not the movie of the week? I actually binge watched the entire superhero parody Invincible because I hate the new Superman, and so I'm like, it's just like American Idol could only discover the American Idol once. The best actor for Superman can only be discovered once. It was Reeve. He's gone. We can't really ever cast him again. There's been adequate Supermen in other movies and shows, but obviously we had our golden era and that's it. It's gone. And so I don't like anything about the new DC Universe Superman that's being advertised. I don't like the trailers. I don't like the production design and the tone of the movie. I'm just like, man, that for all intents and purposes, they could have just left it with Henry Cavill and give us 4 more Superman movies. Anyway, but yeah, so that's it. So I watched Invincible, which is kind of like a play on Superman. I was waiting for my back sprain to go away enough for me to at least get up and walk around normally like a human again. And I had nothing to watch, so 3 seasons of that or whatever. It reminds me of Super Saiyans. It's like they've got these alien guys with mustaches that are super powered up, and it feels very kind of Dragon Ball to me in a way. And they've always said that Goku is the Superman of Japan, and he could go toe to toe with DC Superman as far as being powered up. All right. I also watched this movie called Riff Raff, which has Bill Murray. It's got Ed Harris. It's got Jennifer Coolidge. It's got is it Ben Pullman, Bill Pullman's son or whatever? Or Lewis Pullman. Saw him in that vampire movie recently, into the New Salem's Lot. He's doing some more acting. You want to like this movie, but you just can't. It's kind of like Ed Harris's character and Bill Murray's character are trying to see which one is going to shoot one first so they can get out of the movie. It's awful. That's a binge never for sure. Binge Later, Binge Never. I'm sorry. Binge Now, Binge Later, Binge Never. How do we rate Riff Raff? It's awful. It's about to get a theatrical release. They sent it to me to screen it, and I wanted to like it because I want to see Bill Murray pull one more out in his day before he's gone, before he goes like Gene Hackman. But fuck, man, you're in an awful movie, dude, and you've only been in awful movies for the last 5 to 7 years, and he just seems fucking tone deaf with his selections. But and then Ed Harris doing zero chemistry with he has a teenage son in the movie who's supposed to be his stepson. Literally, they're doing an over-the-shoulder take for almost 40 minutes in the beginning of this movie, and it's awful. There's no chemistry between the two actors. You're wondering, like, where's the plot going to come through? What's happening here? And then it's just a plot boiler crime movie of like a double cross on a double cross, and they throw in an extra double cross there towards the end just for the hell of it. It's fucking terrible, dude. And I haven't said awful things about movies in a very long time. Like, at the risk of not getting another screener from this company, trash. Riff Raff is trash. Anyway. In closing, alright, well, my friend recently quit acting, and he wants guest starred, he went shoulder to shoulder with Gillian Anderson in a couple of things. I'm shook by it, I actually. Because he's like the 10th creative person in my creative circle of like artists and actors and people that I know and that I worked with and that are in my generation, like walking away from it all. And then he's texting me that he wants to do this and that, wants to do some writing, and I said, do it. Then he asked if I could do some writing for him, and then he pitched me, a bunch of pieces of things, and then like against my gut warning me like, don't write a story for him. I ended up like coming up with a whole plot, and we find ourselves in a screenplay by situation. That's where one writer has an idea but can't pull it together, asks his writer friend, and all of a sudden it's like story by Steve, but screenplay by Johnny Spoiler, and Steve or whatever. So, I put it all together, and it's like trying to inspire the next writer to write, but in his meander, like I created a whole movie plot called Laugh Tracks. Do you want to know what that movie's about?